Hey everyone, welcome back to the month of GX. This is a very exciting video because we have a special guest here to talk about Crystal Beasts, one of the fan favorite archetypes of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. GX was in many ways defined by the archetypes, with archetypes like Elemental Heroes, Destiny Heroes, and later release Gladiator Beast and Light Sworns. And because this is a Crystal Beast video, I have referred to our special guest that I alluded to just a second ago, who is the resident Crystal Beast expert on YouTube. You want to introduce yourself?
Howdy y'all on the Janjo zone. I'm Neshi, and I flip up Conclave and Normal Summon Sapphire Pegasus for too long in my life. And today we're going to talk about the debut year for Crystal Beast, specifically in the Perfect Circle format, which is regarded as one of the most popular formats of all time. So I'm excited to get into this.
Yeah, it's definitely one of, if not the most popular of the GX formats. And they had an interesting year of 2007. They don't have Zenith. They don't have a lot of the tools that we're more happy to see nowadays, let alone Golden Rule that recently released by this video's production. But we did get a good amount of Crystal Beast cards, surprisingly. So we have a few decks here for you all, and we're kind of showcase like the thought process behind people building Crystal Beast decks at the time, and how can we improve upon that, and what were the issues, what were the strengths, that sort of stuff. So let's get started with this.
What's interesting, we'll start here. I actually have a Beckett magazine from 2007 when Crystal Beast first debuted, and on the inside they actually have a Crystal Beast deck, and I've actually replicated it here in Dueling Book. The side deck is just consisting of cards that they mentioned could also go well with the deck, so I just put it in the side. But yeah, you have a full deck list of the Crystal Beast.
Yeah, I think it's really cool how they went about it, because sometimes in a lot of these magazines, it can either go one way or the other. It can be a surprisingly decent deck or some really jank thrown together deck. And I think we could definitely see the structure of how an early Crystal Beast deck could work. We see cards like Rescue Cat, a very specific lineup of Crystal Beast cards, really making use of something like Ancient City, Rainbow Ruins. Crystal Abundance there would be probably like one of the power cards for Crystal Beast early on.
If I were to describe one word for this deck, it'd be slow. And I think that was the intention behind this. You know, Cyber Dragon was all over the place in this format. So the idea was you just set your Crystal Beast, have them run over it with bigger monsters, and then eventually set up your Crystal Abundance for the OTK. You know, not many decks could OTK back in these days. So the fact that this deck could, you know, the magazine describes Crystal Abundance as Dark Hole, Heavy Storm, and Different Dimension Return all in one card.
Wow.
So that's a great card to sell, but the problem is you're going to have to play a very slow strategy in order to get there. The only fast card in this deck is Rescue Cat, 100%. Being able to summon Amethyst Cat, attack with both of them, and then in the end phase they get destroyed and get placed in the back row. So that's kind of neat, but that's the only way you're going to get any semblance of speed in this deck. And yeah, it's kind of cool how we're able to pull from the historic minds of the great ones playing with Crystal Beast and how they were able to build it. But honestly, this ain't it, Chief. It's no wonder that this deck didn't put up any results.
No, and we still had a lot of power cards in that, between, you know, like Abundance, like you mentioned, Beacon, and even Sapphire Pegasus for its time was kind of insane when you think about it, given like the card pool. Like, sure, we had a lot of good cards at this time, Card Trooper, Ryza, and this definitely had shades of Elemental Hero Stratos, which was also released earlier 2007.
Yeah, like you mentioned too, Rainbow Ruins, I'd argue is the best field spell of this era. Even going on through HAP format, even like pre-Duelist Alliance, I think Rainbow Ruins continues to be the strongest possible field spell in the game. And, you know, all of the effects are relevant. You know, first of all, it gets protection, you can halve damage to survive, negate spells and traps not once per turn, and draw cards, which is a soft once per turn, so if you have another one, you can do it again. And then the fifth one is just Soul Charge if you summon Ruby. which is awesome. And then what's the biggest problem behind this deck, I mean, the fundamental problems behind Crystal Beast in general is these guys are all vanillas, right? They don't really do anything for you. So you play Lightning Vortex and Card Destruction, Magical Stone Excavation, get them out of the hand in order to, bring them back with Blessing to set up the Abundance. One other card I don't like in the deck, Rare Value. I think this card is bait. I think players just see draw 2, and then their eyes just roll to the back of their head and like, oh, I gotta play it in my deck. But I think this card is not very good. I think you definitely want to play Torrential over like Mirror Force 2. Torrential is just like a no-brainer for Crystal Beast, in my opinion. One of the reasons why you might get Torrential banned, If Crystal Beast were any better, Torrential might get banned.
It's clear that they knew what kind of deck they wanted to build, even with Rare Value, because they're not running Cobalt Eagle. And I think it also says something for just how Rainbow Ruins works, too, in regards to this being a slow deck. It's a deck that kind of works by, like, they want you to slowly build up your resources and build up that value to the point where your opponent eventually can't fight back. But in a format with such strong decks, Aggro Machine, Perfect Circle Monarchs, even going back to 2007, in like the earlier formats with Demise OTK, Troop Dupe Scoop, like it just it just was a little bit. The evolution wasn't very tactical.
I see what you did there.
So where do we go from here? How does this deck like get any better? Because clearly this is not the ceiling for Crystal Beast in 2007.
Right. If we want to make this deck just a little bit better, this would be my version of that Beckett deck. Just playing 2007 format pure Crystal Beast. These would be the changes I would make. Just make it a little bit more competitive. You have more staying power with removal cards like Dust Tornado, Trap Dust Shoot. I think everyone should have mained back then, in my opinion. You have Premature Burial, no Call of the Haunted, because if the monster leaves the field other than destruction, the Call of the Haunted just clogs your spell and trap zone forever, and that's awful. But then you have your 5 ways to get to Rainbow Ruins, best field spell, and then you still keep up the Lightning Vortex and minimizing on Blessing and Promise because they're low impact, and maxing out on the Amethyst Cat to make sure that Rescue Cat is always live.
Yeah, we didn't even see the Promise or the Crystal Raigeki in the Beckett deck.
Yeah, well, we did see Promise, but not... Oh, wait, no, we didn't see Promise. You're absolutely right. What the heck? Yeah, I think Raigeki is just an auto-include. The spot removal at the cost of giving up a back row slot, I think, is invaluable for this kind of format. I mean, you do have cards like Phoenix Wing Wind Blast and Raigeki Break at the time. Maybe Raigeki Break. I'm not quite sure on that. I know
Yes. Yeah, the both should have been around.
Crystal Raigeki is kind of another flavor of that kind of card.
Yeah, and it works great with Crystal Beast. I mean, that's what it was made for. And we're seeing like the Rise in the deck too.
Yes, Rise, a Force of the Breakers staple. What an amazing card when this card was released. Yeah, just the idea that you could special summon a Crystal Beast off of Promise or Beacon, and then immediately tribute it off for Ryza. It's just kind of awesome. But the one thing, there's a lot of things this deck is lacking. But I would say one of the biggest things is the lack of Pegasus Searchers. When you're playing current format and you have cards like Rainbow Bridge and Crystal Bond, you just get foiled on the fact that you see Pegasus every single duel. We don't even have Summoner Monk back in this format, so the ways of seeing Pegasus are slim. Just looking at the ways that this deck gets countered, I mean, what's neat is there isn't really many banishing removal. You have cards like Mystical Space Typhoon to destroy cards. Heavy Storm is obviously really great too, but as long as they don't get banished, they can stay in rotation thanks to Pegasus effect. But the two things that can really set this deck back are Ryza and Phoenix Wing. Ryza or Phoenix Wing, like a Ruby on field, that just sets you back so far. And with how slow this deck is, that's basically the end of the game.
It had all the pieces it needed to form a dedicated deck, which is more than a lot of decks at the time could really say. I mean, you look at Gladiator Beast when they came out and Gladiator's Assault, and they still had to wait for Geyseris in Light of Destruction at the very end of GX era Yu-Gi-Oh! Crystal Beast did have a lot of cards to use. It was just, it still had an uphill battle.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, I suppose you did have Haman around.
Oh gosh.
If you really wanted to.
Haman was a Rainbow Dragon at home. I think this card is with it not having any protection. I personally wouldn't play this card, at least not in the main deck. It'd be funny in the side deck, but just a little too expensive. And even the Beckett article talked about that. It's like you could even play Haman if you want to, but it takes a lot of resources to make.
Beckett guys know what they're talking about, huh? Maybe aside from all the rare value and bricky cards. Because I think ratios is also very important for Crystal Beast too. You just don't want to play 3 of everything just because they can do stuff. But this isn't the only way to play Crystal Beast, is it?
You see, you got this from the Perfect Circle Discord, right?
Correct.
We have Diamond Dude Turbo Crystal Beast. Now, Diamond Dude Turbo, for those of you who don't know, you can go ahead and excavate the top card of your deck. If it's a normal spell, the next turn you basically get to activate it with no cost, which is insane because you could activate cards like Destiny Draw for no cost. You just draw 2 cards. But funny enough, this also works with Crystal Abundance. You don't have to send 4 Crystal Beasts. You just send as many cards on the field as possible to the grave, and then summon back all of your Crystal Beasts and go for game. So this is with cards like Stratos and Rhoda too, this can be a pretty consistent thing to pull off. And in all honesty, it might be the best way to play Crystal Beasts. And it solved the biggest problem that Crystal Beast had at this time, which was speed, right? And Diamond Dude really helps with that.
Yeah, for those who aren't too familiar with GX formats that may be familiar with GOAT format, this really was kind of like the evolution of a Reasoning Gate deck. You just kind of sped through your deck, getting to your power spell cards. In this case, your like normal spell cards. And Dark Magician of Chaos was still pre-errata, still legal. Yeah. Like we saw with the previous deck, you're injecting a little bit more power cards and not rely on a 100% Crystal Beast deck.
You also have cards like a Feather the Phoenix to make it more consistent. Pitch a card, then target any card in your graveyard and put it on top. You can stack a spell card to immediately use for Diamond Dude. Or just use the spell card that you immediately milled off in anyway.
And so by the time Tactical Evolution came out, which was right before Perfect Circle and Zombie format in that fall of 2007, we did get Tactical Evolution, which despite including one of the sizablest, one of the largest Crystal Beast monsters in Rainbow Dragon, the non-Crystal Beast version, that was the only card in the set that was a Crystal Beast card. But even so, we didn't see anyone like mess around with it or play it. But why is that?
The fundamental issue with Rainbow Dragon was that it didn't solve, first of all, any of the Crystal Beast issues, except for the high damage threshold. It did solve that. The other thing too is it didn't do anything, man. Rainbow Dragon, once it hits the field, once you go through all of the pain and agony of collecting all 7 Crystal Beasts and hoping none of them get banished, you go through by something even like a DD Crow, which was played back then for stuff like Disc Commander, then you just have the guy sit there. It's at 4,000 attack. It can't even activate the effects the turn it's summoned, which is just a crime. So I think just the fact that Rainbow Dragon didn't solve any Crystal Beast issues, it really just was just a worse Haman, honestly. I think this card was a huge letdown to a lot of people, especially for Crystal Beast fans back in the day. And it is an awesome fan favorite card, though, because it did have a whole arc in the anime, and it has a beautiful, beautiful ghost rare. So we can't deny its a true forerunner for being the very first ghost rare in the game. So I think that's something to be noteworthy.
Yeah, and you thought Crystal Beasts were slow before, and on top of that, you had at this time you had to play every single Crystal Beast, and as you mentioned, they're basically vanilla monsters. Not like they just had some weird beatdown strategy, but when they get like a card that's supposed to be like the beatdown win condition, well, we kind of saw already the better win con card is Crystal Abundance,
which we can actually access faster thanks to Diamond Dude. So it's like, at that point, what's the point?
Yeah, and even still, it's hard to say that it would be, if people played that strategy back then, it would be more of a meta deck, because with the formats, like the decks are already so really, really powerful, at least like all the top decks. Yeah, it was in tier 1 format, but again, they still had an uphill struggle, like regardless, and it'd be quite a while before they could even crawl back out of that low tier hood.
Not going to take, honestly, until even
Legendary Duelists.
2018 is when we finally get some semblance of Crystal Beast support in Crystal Bond, Rainbow Bridge, Rainbow Overdragon, and Ultimate Crystal Magic was the other card. And, Rainbow Bridge and Crystal Bond, amazing. Rainbow Overdragon and Ultimate Crystal Magic, not so much. But then we finally got the Pendulum imports in Crystal Keeper, Crystal Master, as well as Rainbow Refraction, which I have still in my life have yet to resolve because it's such backwards design, and Crystal Conclave, which I have right behind me. And you could tell how great that card is. But even then, it still wasn't enough. It didn't. And then 2022, we finally got Zenith, which really did help out with the deck, turning Pegasus into a 1-card rank 4 Link 2. Making it some kind of like playable in 2022. Then we got Rainbow Bridge of Salvation and the Megatons. Searching any field spell in the game. Hello, Mystic Mine. Gotta love it. But then it took the structure deck, honestly, before Crystal Beast got its first regional top. And that's crazy. For a deck from 2007 all the way up to 2022, it's... Wow, yeah, 2022 truly was the year of the Crystal Beast, because back then, this ain't it. This ain't it.
No, it took a long time. And even like the structure deck was just much needed reprints for a lot of people to even try the deck out. I mean, it just goes to show that, let's face it, a crappy deck from like way back then, it is a fan favorite, and it's cool to see it eventually get back into a higher spot on people's tier lists, and just people look back at the GX era fondly with a lot of these archetypes, with Crystal Beast, with Elemental Heroes, and I think that Crystal Beast is one of people's favorites archetypes from that whole era. Like, a lot of people think of that era and they think like, oh, Crystal Beast. Oh yeah, that was that really cool archetype. Very, very unique, very, very fun. And exactly. It's the fact that people can still build stuff nowadays, and they can still build something that's at least more playable. Sans like a Beckett magazine, I think is really awesome.
I think it's a crime that they didn't get any support for the first 11 years. We got the Crystal Beast in 2007. The support stopped at Rainbow Dragon in 2007. And then it wasn't until 2018 where we finally got the imports. And then it wasn't from then until 2022 when we got like the rest of everything else. And then 2023 Golden Rule. But there's 11-year jump between support waves. That's just a crime, in my opinion, for such a fan favorite archetype.
Yeah, but look at them now. They are golden, baby. Gold.
They are golden. Yeah, 100%.
I'm very happy to see it. I'm also happy to have you on the Janjo Zone. Thank you very much, Neshi, for joining. I don't do collabs too terribly often, but when I wanted to do a video like this, I knew who I had to call upon.
I appreciate you hitting me up and that we could do this. This was awesome, taking a trip down memory lane, even though I personally didn't start playing back then. I started playing in 2012, but it's great being able to look back on how people did play back then and what kind of options were available back in this era. I think it's important to know.
Absolutely, and that's the whole point of my channel, is to kind of be like an historical guide to the game. With that said, is anyone or anything you want to shout out?
Shoutouts to the Conclave, everyone there, and shoutouts to the people at Beckett for giving us this ancient artifact of a resource to reference. Shoutouts to my buddy Tony for getting this to me in the first place, so I'll do that.
Shoutouts to Tony, absolutely. Yeah. All right, well, I will see you all later.
See you guys.